It's a horrendous moment, but it's not a war. Humanity is not divided into us and them, our side and the enemy. We're all on the same side on this one. So the first thing is to say, look, think back to Yom HaShoah and what war is really like. Not only for us, but, for 6 years. It took an awful long time for human values to be restored after that. There was a lot of hate and a lot of killing. And the first thing I say is put things in perspective. Nobody's killing one another. The sun is shining. The birds are audible in a way I can never hear. Here we are near the Finchley Road and there are no cars. You can hear the birds. It's thrilling. That's number one. Su'u einechem marom ur'u mi bara ela, said Isaiah. Lift up your eyes and see who created all this. That's number one. Number two, the Gina Turgle message. Understand that you can walk outside your front door and nobody's going to beat you up. You can take a walk in the park and you can smile at people and they will not tell the police about you. Gina was saying, don't take freedom for granted. Just know what it's like to lose it, and then you will appreciate it when you have it. And number three, I would go back to the classic Jewish text, the Sefer HaChinuch, who says, Acharei ha'pu'ulot nimshechu levavot, which means the heart follows the deed. Did you know that if you want to feel happy, smile? Put on a smile and you'll feel happy. Don't wait to feel happy before you smile. Do the act and the mood will follow. People ask, why do I wear a yellow tie? That's the sartorial equivalent of a smile. It cheers you up. So if you are sitting all alone, waiting for somebody to phone you up, turn it around and phone somebody else up. Don't wait for things to happen. Make them happen. The sages said, Kol makom shenema vayehi eina ela lashon tsar. Wherever you see the words, and it came to pass, that's always sad. Don't wait for something to come to pass. Say, yehi, as God did at the beginning, let there be. And that's what the survivors did. They didn't wait for somebody to save them. They said, I am going to be master of my destiny. As Edith Eger's mother said to her on the way to Auschwitz, nobody can take away from you what is in your mind. So, do the deed and the happiness will follow. And really and truly, if you feel very much alone, for the next hour, sit and phone everyone you can think of and say nice things about them.
Thank you so much. And I think that's a really important message for all of us. I'm smiling right now. I'm very much enjoying your yellow tie, Rabbi Sachs. But I think that, we've all been in touch with each other a lot more over this period and actually are really appreciating each other. But it's true, we should make those moves as well to fulfill ourselves. And actually, I should say that somebody who I think really sort of represents that to me is somebody who took it upon himself after the Holocaust to really make a difference here, and that's Sir Ben Helfgott, who really understood about making decisions and creating his own destiny. What more of an example could we have? Rabbi Sachs, we're going to conclude. I feel like we've only skimmed the surface as there's so much to explore, but it's been enriching and compelling. And I'm sure that those joining us have, or I hope certainly that they've valued this as much as I have. For those watching, do please take a look at the resource we've created together. You can find this at rabbisachs.org/Holocaust. Rabbi Sachs wrote a prayer some years ago for Yom HaShoah, a prayer that I remember was very powerful and very moving. And I wondered if we could finish today's conversation by asking you, Rabbi Sachs, to recite the prayer on behalf of us all.
Yeah. Today, on Yom HaShoah, we remember the victims of the greatest crime of man against man. The young, the old, the innocent, the 1.5 million children, starved, shot, given lethal injections, gassed, burned, and turned to ash because they were deemed guilty of the crime of being different. We remember what happens when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. What happens when victims cry for help and there is no one listening? What happens when humanity fails to recognize that those who are not in our image are nonetheless in God's image? We remember and pay tribute to the survivors who bore witness to what happened and to the victims, so that robbed of their lives, they would not be robbed also of their deaths. We remember and give thanks for the righteous of the nations who saved lives, often at the risk of their own, teaching us how, in the darkest night, we can light a candle of hope. Today on Yom HaShoah, we call on you, Almighty God, to help us hear your voice that says in every generation, do not murder, do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor, do not oppress the stranger. We know that whilst we do not have the ability to change the past, we can change the future. We know that whilst we cannot bring the dead back to life, we can ensure their memories live on and that their deaths were not in vain. And so on this Yom HaShoah, we commit ourselves to one simple act, Yizkor, remember. May the souls of the victims be bound in the bond of everlasting life. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Sachs. Thank you all for joining us, and be well.
Ladies and gentlemen, each year on Yom HaShoah, the Jewish community comes together to mourn the heartbreaking loss of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children who were so brutally murdered in the Holocaust. This evening, as we mark 75 years since liberation, I am only too aware that the majority of survivors and refugees will be isolated at home and deeply concerned that this year they will be unable to do justice to what is such a significant anniversary. As patron of both Holocaust Memorial Day and World Jewish Relief, I can only say that my heart goes out to you all as you remember the Shoah. Despite the unimaginable horrors that they endured and the losses they suffered, the survivors and refugees who found a welcome in Britain somehow managed to piece their lives back together to become the leaders and builders of your community, active citizens and dedicated contributors to wider British society. They have been and continue to be shining examples to the world of how it is possible to triumph over adversity. Whilst they may consider themselves the lucky ones when so many did not survive, to us they are simply nothing short of living heroes who were determined not just to survive, but to thrive as they built new lives, new homes, and new families here in the United Kingdom. Of course, for many of you watching this evening, these are more than heroes. They are your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, of whom I know you are enormously proud. Above all, I am aware, from the privilege of meeting many of the survivors during my lifetime, that their greatest concern had always been that succeeding generations should never forget the lessons of the unimaginable horror which engulfed so many ancient Jewish communities throughout Europe and robbed us in one fell swoop of so much talent, genius, and unrealized intellectual promise. For 75 years, survivors, refugees, and liberators have inspired us with their positive messages of hope, which now, at such an unprecedented, anxious, and strange time in all our lives, can perhaps remind us that through faith, resolve, and determination, the day will soon come that we will all be safely together again, when, as the psalmist writes, "Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." Until then, I am with you in spirit and send my warmest greetings to you all.
They stood in fear, where could they go? They stood so brave, what did they know? On this day, heroes pray, each prayer meant for you. Your HaShoah, how could it be the world was blind? Was no one there to make a stand? On this day, heroes pray, our prayers fall out to you. Your HaShoah, on this day, heroes pray, our prayers fall out to you. Your HaShoah, never again, never again, hear our voice tonight. Never again, never again, knowing wrong from right. Years have gone, we still behold the Spirit left in stars of storm. On this day, heroes pray, to you. Your HaShoah, on this day, heroes pray, singing praise to you. Your
Eufen Puipetschig brennt der Feier und in Stubis Heis und der Rebbe lebend kleiner Kinder dem Aleph Beis und der Rebbe lebend kleiner Kinder dem Aleph Beis. Sog Kinderlich, gedenk Teiere, was ihr lernt dort. Sog noch einmal und packe noch einmal, kommet alle vor. Sog noch einmal und packe noch einmal, kommet alle vor.
At the fireplace, a little fire burns, and in the room it's warm. The rabbi teaches the little children the Aleph Bet. See, children dear, remember, dears, what you are learning here. Say once again, and then once again, comets, Aleph, Oh. And then came Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, a series of coordinated attacks against Jews throughout Nazi Germany and parts of Austria on the 9th and 10th of November 1938. The attacks left the streets covered with broken glass from the windows of Jewish-owned stores, buildings and synagogues. At least 91 Jews were killed in the attacks, and 30,000 were arrested and incarcerated in concentration camps. Jewish homes, hospitals and schools were ransacked. Over 1,000 synagogues were burned. Over 7,000 Jewish businesses destroyed or damaged. It was the beginning of the end for the Jews in Europe.
Dear Mirala, I can't believe I have one night to cram a lifetime of love into this letter. Tomorrow morning, if 4 a.m. can be called morning, I'm going to give you away. I'm going to take you, Mirala, to the back entrance of dear, brave Herman's grocery shop, where the child rescuers will be waiting for you and 32 other children, all under the age of 3. They'll inject you with a drug so you won't cry. And then, my life, my love, before it gets light, they'll take you away from me and this barbaric country to a life of safety. We kept putting it off, Mirala. We didn't want to believe we would have to give you up, probably never to see you again. But this is the last child rescue. After this, there will be no one left to rescue, because we've been told that tomorrow will be the last big roundup. They're going to come for the men, women, and the children. Our trusted informer, Herman, the brave, non-Jewish doctor, has finally convinced us. He says any child they take away either dies immediately or dies on the way to a death camp. The word death 3 times in one sentence. We were the last ones to be convinced to give up our child. Herman said finally, with the deepest sadness in every exhausted wrinkle in his face, I cannot force you, But if you keep her with you, she will be dead in a month. They have no use for babies. They cannot work for them. If you want to give her to us, bring her to the back entrance of my grocery shop at 4 a.m. No belongings, just whatever food you have. Goodbye. Mirala, do you see why I have to give you up? He said no belongings, but I will beg, I will plead that this letter be allowed to go, sewn into your clothes. And then I will pray to God that the letter stays with you until you are old enough to read it. You must know that we love you. You must know why you are alone without parents. Not because we didn't love you, but because we did.
כשהלב בוכה, רק אלוקים שומע, הכאב עולה מתוך הנשמה. אדם נופל לפני שהוא שוקע, בתפילה קטנה חותכת הדממה. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט. וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. כשהלב בוכה, הזמן עומד מלכת. האדם רואה את כל חייו פתאום. אל הלא נודע, הוא לא רוצה ללכת. לאלוקיו קורא על סף תהום. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט. וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, עכשיו אני לבד. חזק אותי אלוקיי, עשה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ואין לאן לברוח. עשה שיגמר, כי לא נותר בי כוח.
I can see in my mind's eye, at this very moment, the imposing image of my deeply respected grandfather, Rabbi Tzvi Meltzer, handsome and dignified. I was blessed to have been his beloved grandson. He was my guide and mentor. He was the one who taught me Torah. I see him with his white beard and dark eyebrows, enveloped in his talis, among the congregation davening in the shul. In the town where I was born, Vishniev, in Belarus. I wrapped myself in the folds of his talis, and with much emotion listened to his clear and lovely voice. It is still ringing in my ears as he recited the Kol Nidre prayer of Yom Kippur. In the hours and the moments when, according to our belief, the creator of the world determines who to life and who to death. I still remember him at the train station from which I, an 11-year-old, started on my journey from my village to Eretz Yisrael. I remember his poignant embrace. I remember the last words and the order that I heard from his mouth. My boy, always remain a Jew. The train whistled and started on its way. I continued watching my grandfather until he disappeared from sight. That was the last time I saw him. When the Nazis came to Vishniev, they ordered all the members of the community to congregate in the shul. My grandfather marched in front, together with his family, wrapped in the same talis in which I enveloped myself as a child. The doors were locked from the outside, and the wooden structure was torched. And the only remains of the whole community were embers. There were no survivors.
Aleile ani vochia Eini yored amayim ki rachak mimeni menachem meishiv nafshi.
As the smoke of war cleared in 1945, as the Russians entered Auschwitz and the British Bergen-Belsen, slowly people began to understand the enormity of what had happened. A third of world Jewry had gone up in flames. Entire worlds, the bustling Jewish townships of Eastern Europe, the Talmudic academies, the courts of the Jewish mystics, the Yiddish-speaking masses, the urban Jews of Austria and Germany, the Jews of Poland, who had lived among their Gentile neighbors for 800 years, the Sephardi Jews of Greece, who had lived there for 24 centuries, the legendary synagogues and houses of study, all were erased. 1.5 million children had been murdered, not just because of their faith or their parents' faith, but because one of their grandparents had been a Jew. When the destruction, the Shoah, was over, a pillar of cloud marked the place where Europe's Jews had once been, and a silence that consumed all words. There are many silences in Judaism. There is a silence of grief, Vayidom Aharon, Aaron's silence when his sons died. There is a silence of trauma, when there are no words to express what we feel. Then there is the silence of the victims, the words, the prayers they did not live to say. There is the silence of death. And then there is the silence of memory, as we remember those we have lost. Nefesh achat ka'olam maleh. One life is like a universe. Tonight, we remember 6 million lost universes, a whole murdered generation. If we were to remain silent for 1 minute for each of the victims of the Shoah, we would have to remain silent for 11.5 years. Let us now remember and be silent.
I stand before you as the President of the State of Israel, the home of the Jewish people. And with me come Holocaust survivors and representatives of the next generation. In memory of and in honor of the 6 million Jews who turned to ashes, I pray.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ולמד דברה כרעותי, וימליך מלכותי, ויצמח פורקני, ויקרב משיחי, בחיוכון וביומי חון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה, מברך לעולם ולעלמי עולמה, עולמיה. תפילה זו מסתיימת במילים שהיו לסמל במדינת ישראל, לחלום בעולם היהודי. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
A couple of years ago, a group of Holocaust survivors, by now gaunt and frail, made their way back to Auschwitz. They were there to commemorate the day, 73 years ago, when Soviet troops liberated Auschwitz and saw, for the first time, the true dimensions of the greatest crime since human beings first set foot on Earth. The moment would have been emotional at the best of times, but this year brought an especially disturbing undercurrent. The book of Genesis says that when God told Abraham what would happen to his descendants, a fear of great darkness fell over him. Something of that fear haunted the survivors, who have witnessed the return of anti-Semitism to Europe after 70 years of political leaders' constant avowals of never again. As they finished saying Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for mourners, one man cried out, "I don't want to come here again." Everyone knew what he meant. For once, the fear was not only about the past, but the fear was also about the future. An ancient hatred has been reborn, and the world is now realizing that a vitriolic hatred of Israel has a name, and that name is anti-Semitism. What has happened over the last few years here in the UK should make us all realize that hate and anti-Semitism have no place in modern British society. Let's hope it's silenced before it's too late. Then there was the strength of those who refused to give in to the evil and did whatever they could to save Jews from the slaughter. There were many righteous among the nations, as well as fellow Jews, who showed fortitude and resolve, which saved thousands. One of those was Sir Nicholas Winton, who died aged 101. Here is his remarkable story.
Nicholas Winton, then a 29-year-old clerk, visited Prague, Czechoslovakia in late 1938 at the invitation of his friend from the British Embassy. He spent only a couple of months assisting in refugee camps before he realized the danger posed by the imminent Nazi invasion. Winton immediately recognized the danger and made every effort possible to get the children to safety. After the war, Nicholas Winton kept his wartime rescue efforts and achievements secret. His deeds went unrecognized for over half a century and would have stayed so if it wasn't for his late wife, who found a scrapbook in the attic with all the children's photos, a complete list of names, a few letters from parents of the children to Winton, and other documents. Nicholas Winton was first faced with the children he rescued in a television show. He was given no indication of what to expect.
All the letters. But back here is the list of all the children. This is Vera Diamant, now Vera Gissing. We did find her name on his list. Vera Gissing is with us here tonight. Hello, Vera. And I should tell you that you are actually sitting next to Nicholas Winton.
And it was just so wonderful, so terribly, terribly touching.
Can I ask, is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please?
One of the remarkable stories of the Shoah is what happened after liberation, as the survivors began to attempt to rebuild their shattered lives. We are inspired by these survivors, their strength and courage to engage and embrace life. They are heroes for their ability to respond to the hatred they received with a love for humanity and to build families and futures for our people. They give us hope for the future.
Someday we will all be together. Someday we'll be sheltered and warm. Never will we have to express any fear. Our scars and our wounds will disappear. Avraham and Yitzchak will be there to greet us. Yaakov and his sons will stand by and smile. Moshe Rabbeinu will greet us once again. Yerushalayim V'ezrat Hashem. Someday we'll all be together.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Could I ask what that tattoo is on your arm? It's just that it's a bit boring. It's a line of numbers.
Well, I was about your age when I got it, and I keep it as a reminder.
Oh, a reminder of happier days?
No. Of a time when the world went mad.
So you keep it to remind yourself?
No, my darling. To remind you.
שלא ייגמר לעולם החול והים רישרוש של המים ורק השמיים תפילת האדם החול והים רישוש של המים ורק השמיים תפילת האדם. Oh Lord my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the seas, the rush of the water, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of man.
If only they could see us now, praying in a place where they tried to destroy us, wearing the flags that symbolize our strength and unity, standing together, treasuring a religion that made them want to burn us, gas us, torture us, murder us, knowing that the place that was meant to break us apart is bringing us together, making us stronger. If only they could see us now, walking out of the gas chambers alive, being near the crematoria without smelling the death of our own people, crying tears, not of pain, but of triumph, pride, passion, and love. Remembering, praying for those who lost their lives, but not their faith. What if they could see us now? They would ask how to destroy us. The answer is, you cannot destroy us. We are indestructible. Because although we stand as many, our hearts stand as one. That beautiful poem was written by Dana Lee when she was 17 years old, having been to Poland with Tribe. Over the years, I've had the honor of leading several trips to Poland, of both sixth formers and adults from the Stanmore community. We go for 5 days. We see the horrors of Majdanek and Auschwitz firsthand, but we also sing and dance. When we visit the grave of Noam Elimelech in Lezhensk and celebrate Shabbat in Krakow with Jews from across the world, with the realization that despite all we have endured, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people lives. Once, we were dancing on Friday night in the Isaac Shul in Krakow, hundreds of us from Israel, Argentina, America, and the UK. And I danced with a survivor whose grandson was part of the American group. He cried while we danced. After all we went through, after all we have endured, look around you. You will give me hope for the future. Tonight, we remembered what happens when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. We remember and pay tribute to the survivors who bore witness to what happened without hate or desire for revenge, but simply to remember the victims so that robbed of their lives, they would not be robbed also of their deaths. And to teach us that the road that begins with hate ends, if unopposed, at the gates of hell. We remember and give thanks for the righteous among the nations who save lives, often at the risk of their own, teaching us how, in the darkest night, we can light a candle of hope. And we hand on those memories to a new generation.
Miracles happen. My mother's letter stayed with me, sewn into my undershirt. My mother's faith in God, even at that dreadful hour, never ceases to amaze me. Even though she is almost certain that she will soon die, as indeed she did, she believes firmly in God, to whom she can turn both before and after her earthly life ends. This strengthens my faith, and perhaps it will strengthen yours. After almost 50 years of keeping it private, I translated it from the Yiddish and decided to share it with you now. Mirila, do you see why I have to give you up? He said no belongings, but I will beg, I will plead that this letter is allowed to go, sewn into your undershirt. And then I will pray to God that the letter stays with you until you're old enough to read it. You must know that we love you. You must know why you are alone without parents. Not because we didn't love you, but because we did. It's 2 a.m. already. Only 2 more hours with you, my love, my baby, my life, my Mirila. I'm going to hold you now, Mirila, for 2 hours. Your father and I are going to wake you, feed you, and tell you over and over how much we love you. You're barely 2 years old, but maybe, if God is good, maybe you'll remember. And maybe you'll keep this letter until you're old enough to read it. There will be bad times for you, Mirila, I know. But just think about me holding you, rocking you to sleep in the sunlight. Keep that sunlight in your heart always. I love you. Your father loves you. May God help us all. Mama.
It was the most haunting of all prophetic visions. The prophet Ezekiel saw a valley of dry bones, a heap of skeletons. God asked him, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel replied, "God, you alone know." Then the bones came together and grew flesh and skin and began to breathe and live again. Then God said, "Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say our bones are dried up, of that tikvatenu our hope is lost. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what God says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel." It was this passage that Naftali Herz Imber was alluding to in 1877, when he wrote in the song that became Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, the phrase Od lo of Da Tikvatenu, our hope is not yet lost. Little could he have known that 70 years later, 1/3 of the Jewish people would have become, in Auschwitz and Treblinka and Bergen-Belsen, a valley of dry bones. Who could have been blamed for saying, our bones are dried up, our hope is lost? And yet, a mere 3 years after standing eyeball to eyeball with the angel of death, the Jewish people, by proclaiming the state of Israel, made a momentous affirmation of life, as if it had heard across the centuries the echo of God's words to Ezekiel, "Veheveti etchem el admat Yisrael." I will bring you back to the land of Israel. And a day will one day come when the story of Israel in modern times will speak not just to Jews, but to all who believe in the power of the human spirit as it reaches out to God, as an everlasting symbol of the victory of life over death, hope over despair.
The day I reached Belsen concentration camp, the 5th day of liberation, was a Friday, the day before the Jewish Sabbath. Something like half the surviving prisoners at Belsen were Jews, and the Jewish chaplain to the British Second Army, the Reverend L.H. Hardman, held an eve of the Sabbath service in the open air in the midst of the camp. It was the first Jewish service that many of the men and women present had taken part in for 6 years. It was probably the first Jewish service held on German soil in absolute security and without fear for a decade. Around us lay the corpses that there had not been time to clear away, even after 5 days. 40,000 or more had been cleared, but there were still 1,000 or 2,000 around. And people were still lying down and dying in broad daylight in front of our eyes. This was the background to this open-air Jewish service. During the service, the few hundred people gathered together were sobbing openly, with joy at their liberation, and with sorrow the memory of their parents and brothers and sisters that had been taken from them and gassed and burned. These people knew they were being recorded. They wanted the world to hear their voice. They made a tremendous effort, which quite exhausted them. Listen.
Am Yisrael Chai, the children of Israel still liveth.
Tonight, by this act of remembering, we've taken a journey from grief to hope. We cannot bring the dead back to life, but if we live for what they lived for and what they died for, we can make their memory live on in us. We can't change the past, but we can and must change the future, demonstrating that Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people, lives. Nowhere is an affirmation of life more vivid than in Medinat Israel, the state of Israel, where the Jewish people has been reborn, the place whose national anthem is HaTikva, which means the hope. A few moments ago, we heard HaTikva sung by voices from the past, from Bergen-Belsen, as it was liberated 75 years ago. Let us end with all of us here adding our voice to theirs, so that their hope and ours may meet and take wing towards a Jewish future without war, without hate, and without fear. Let us come together again next week as we remember those who fell in defense of our homeland on Yom HaZikaron. And then the following day, as we celebrate with Bnei Akiva the momentous 72nd anniversary of the State of Israel with Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Jewish state. So please now stand to sing the national anthem of the State of Israel, the anthem of the Jewish people, our hope, HaTikva.
Nefesh Yehudi Homiya Ulfate Mizrach Kadima Ein LeZion Sophia. Zion, Yerushalayim, Liotam Choshim, Le'aretzenu, Eretz Zion, Yerushalayim.